Episode 3, 7 Nights of Magic. Episode 3, 7 Nights of Magic. The labyrinth was even more magnificent from the inside than Jade had imagined. The castle at its heart sprawled across impossible architecture, with towers that reached toward a sky perpetually caught between twilight and dawn. Stairs led in directions that defied gravity, and doors opened onto rooms that shouldn't have been able to exist in the same physical space. Jade led the group through corridors lined with crystalline formations that chimed softly as they passed, creating an ever-changing symphony. Goblins peeked out from corners and alcoves, their wide eyes tracking the newcomers with curiosity and mischief. One particularly bold goblin tugged on Bucky's metal arm, squeaking in delight when it pinged under his knuckles before scampering away. "They'll get used to you," Jared said with amusement, "and you'll get used to them. Eventually. The castle has already begun preparing rooms for each of you. It has a certain sentience, you see. It knows what you need before you do." They arrived at a grand hall that seemed to serve as the heart of the castle. A massive round table dominated the center, its surface etched with patterns that looked like star charts from 1,000 different worlds. Around it stood 7 high-backed chairs, each one somehow perfectly suited to its intended occupant. "Our war room," Sheriff announced with a flourish, "where we'll plan our strategy against the darkness. But that's for tomorrow. Tonight, we rest and adjust to our new reality." "There's something we need to discuss," Snape said, his voice cutting through the wonder of the moment with typical severity. He moved to stand beside Jade, his dark eyes serious. "The anchoring process I mentioned. It's not something that can wait. Every moment Jade exists as an active nexus without proper anchors puts enormous strain on her system." Jade felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. What exactly does this anchoring process involve? "Connection," Loki said, materializing a chair from thin air and sitting with casual elegance. "Deep, intimate connection. The kind that binds souls together across realities." "He means we need to sleep with her," Fatty said bluntly, earning himself sharp looks from several of the others. He shrugged, unrepentant. "What? We were all thinking it. I just said it." Jade felt her face burning. "All of you? At once?" "Not necessarily at once," Edgar Allan Poe said gently, his voice like warm honey. "Though eventually, yes, we'll need to forge a complete circuit. But the process can be gradual. 7 nights, perhaps. One for each of us to establish our individual bond with you. And during these nights," Snape continued, "we can also begin your training. Each of us has unique skills that you'll need to master. As a Nexus, you have the potential to learn and wield abilities from across all realities, but you need teachers." Kylo Ren had been silent until now, standing slightly apart from the group. This is a lot to put on someone who just discovered what she was yesterday. "It is," Jade agreed, grateful that someone had voiced a concern. She took a deep breath, looking at each of them in turn. "But Snape is right. I can feel it. There's this constant pull, like I'm being stretched in 7 different directions. It's not painful yet, but it's there." "Then we proceed carefully," Jareth said, moving to stand beside her, "one night at a time. And Jade, you're in control. If at any point you want to stop, we stop. This only works if it's something you truly want." Jade looked at the Goblin King, at his mismatched eyes that held both danger and genuine concern. She thought about the strange pull she'd felt toward him from the moment she'd first seen him through that portal. Then she looked at the others, at the way each of them represented something she'd dreamed about her entire life. Adventure, magic, purpose, family. "I want this," she said quietly. "I'm scared, but I want it. I've spent my whole life alone, feeling like I didn't belong anywhere. And now I have 7 people who are literally bound to me by destiny. That's either the most terrifying thing ever, or the most beautiful. Maybe both." "Definitely both," Bucky said with a slight smile. It was the first time she'd seen him smile, and it transformed his face, making him look years younger. "So," Jade said, trying to keep her voice steady despite her racing heart, "how do we decide who goes first?" "That would be me, precious thing," Jareth said, offering her his hand. "I am, after all, the one whose domain we're standing in, and I'd very much like to show you the wonders of the labyrinth properly." There was something in his eyes, a mix of desire and tenderness, that made Jade's breath catch. She took his hand, feeling the now familiar tingle of connection. "The rest of you, get settled," Jareth instructed the others. "The castle will show you to your rooms. We'll reconvene tomorrow to begin proper planning." As Jareth led her away from the hall, Jade glanced back to see the others watching. Loki gave her an encouraging nod. Edgar offered a gentle smile. Even Snape's expression had softened slightly. They were giving her their blessing, she realized, their support. This was really happening. Sheriff's chambers were exactly what Jade would have expected from the Goblin King. The room was a study in theatrical elegance, all velvet and crystal and impossible luxury. A massive bed dominated one wall, draped in silks that seemed to shimmer with their own light. Windows looked out over the labyrinth, the maze glowing softly under the twilight sky. But what caught Jade's attention most was a collection of crystal spheres arranged on pedestals throughout the room. They rolled and danced, seemingly of their own accord, creating patterns of light that played across the walls. "Contact juggling," Jade said, remembering. "That's one of your signature abilities." "Indeed," Jareth said, plucking one of the spheres from its pedestal with easy grace. He set it rolling across his palm, over his knuckles, making it float and spin with movements that looked like magic because they were magic. "It's more than just a parlor trick, though. The crystals are a focus for my power. They allow me to see possibilities, to manipulate reality on a small scale, to show people what they desire most." He offered the crystal to her, and Jade took it carefully. The moment it touched her palm, images flooded her vision. She saw herself, but different, confident, powerful, surrounded by her 7 champions in a moment of perfect unity. The darkness they were meant to fight loomed in the distance, but together they were holding it back. "Is this real?" she whispered. "Is this possible?" "It's one possibility," Jareth replied, his voice close to her ear as he stood behind her. "One of infinite futures, but it's a strong one, a likely one, if we forge the bonds we need." His hands came to rest on her shoulders, warm through the fabric of her shirt. Jade leaned back against him, feeling the solid reality of his presence. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "I've never done this before. Any of this." "I know," Jareth said gently. His fingers moved to her wild red curls, carefully working through the tangles. "We have all the time in the world, precious thing. The labyrinth exists outside normal time. A night here could be moments in the outside world, or an eternity. We can take this as slowly as you need." Jade turned to face him, the crystal still cradled in her palm. "What if I'm not what you expect? What if I can't be the Nexus you need?" Hare's expression softened in a way she hadn't seen before. He reached up and cupped her face in his hands, his touch surprisingly gentle for someone known for his cruelty in the stories. "You already are," he said simply. "You walked into my world and asked me to be a hero. No one has ever believed I could be that before. You see something in me that I'd forgotten existed. How could I expect anything more from you than what you've already given?" The words broke something open in Jade's chest. She rose on her toes and kissed him, pouring all her gratitude and wonder and fear and hope into the gesture. Jareth made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, deepening the kiss until Jade forgot to be nervous. His hands moved to the hem of her shirt, and he paused, his eyes asking permission. Jade nodded, and he lifted it over her head with care. She stood before him in the crystalline light, vulnerable and terrified and exhilarated all at once. Beautiful, Jareth murmured, his fingers tracing the constellation-shaped birthmark on her shoulder blade. Your power is written on your skin. He began to undress himself with theatrical grace, revealing a body that was lean and elegant and marked with silver scars that looked like they'd been made by claws, evidence of battles fought in a life that spanned centuries. They came together on the silk-covered bed, and Jareth took his time, mapping every inch of her skin with touches that were part worship, part claiming. He showed her pleasure she'd never imagined, patience and skilled, and utterly focused on her responses. When they finally joined, Jade felt something shift in the fabric of reality itself. Energy poured between them, her Nexus power and his wild labyrinth magic, intertwining until she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. She could see through his eyes, feel what he felt, understand the depth of loneliness he'd carried for centuries as the Goblin King. And he could see her, all of her, every lonely night in foster homes, every book she'd hidden in, every dream she thought was impossible. He saw it all and gathered her closer, whispering words in a language that predated human speech. The climax, when it came, was like a supernova. Jade felt the first anchor lock into place, a golden thread connecting her soul to Jareth across all possible realities. The strain she'd been feeling, that constant pull, eased slightly. They lay tangled together afterwards, both breathing hard, both fundamentally changed. That was magic, Jade whispered. That was just the beginning, Jareth replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. Now, let me teach you what I know. For the rest of that impossible night, Jareth showed her the art of crystal manipulation. He taught her how to focus her powers through the spheres, how to make them dance and show visions. And Jade's first attempts were clumsy, the crystals dropping more often than they rolled, but Jareth was patient. It's not about control, he explained, demonstrating the smooth roll of a crystal from one hand to another. It's about partnership. The crystal wants to move, you just guide it. By the time the eternal twilight outside had cycled to what felt like morning, Jade could keep a single crystal rolling across her palm without dropping it. It wasn't much, but it was a start. You're natural, Jareth said, pulling her back against his chest as they lounged in his bed. In a few weeks, you'll be conjuring crystal spheres from thin air like I do. Will all the training sessions be like this? Jade asked, unable to keep a smile from her voice. I certainly hope so, Jareth purred. Now rest, my Nexus. Tomorrow night, the god of mischief will claim his turn, and Loki is nothing if not theatrical about these things. Jade drifted off to sleep in Jareth's arms, feeling safer and more complete than she ever had in her life. One anchor, forged. 6 more to go. The next day passed in a blur of activity. The 7 champions gathered in the war room, beginning to plan their strategy against the coming darkness. Snake produced ancient texts about Nexus beings from throughout history. Loki contributed knowledge of cosmic threats from his time in Asgard. Kylo Ren spoke of disturbances in the Force that aligned with the darkness they were meant to fight. But through it all, Jade felt Loki's eyes on her. The god of mischief was setting her with an intensity that was both unnerving and thrilling. When evening came, he approached her with a slight bow. My turn, I believe, he said, offering his hand. Unless you've changed your mind about wanting a trickster god in your bed. I haven't changed my mind, Jade said, taking his hand. His fingers were cool against hers, his touch sending shivers up her arm. Loki's chambers were a study in elegant chaos. Books were stacked everywhere, interspersed with strange artifacts from across the 9 realms. A wall of windows looked out onto a view that definitely wasn't a labyrinth. Instead, Jade saw the golden spires of Asgard gleaming in the distance. I may have taken some liberties with my room, Loki said with a smirk. The castle is quite accommodating to those with magical skills. It's beautiful, Jade said honestly. She moved to the window, looking out at the impossible view. Is that real? Can you really see Asgard from here? In a manner of speaking, Loki replied, coming to stand beside her. The labyrinth exists between realities. With the right magic, you can create windows to anywhere. I wanted to keep my home in sight, even if I can't return to it just yet. There was pain in his voice, carefully hidden, but present. Jade turned to him, reaching up to touch his face. You miss it, your family. I miss the idea of it, Loki said quietly. The reality was always more complicated. Thor is my brother, but also my rival. Odin is my father, but he kept the truth of my heritage from me. I never quite fit in their golden world. I understand that, Jade said, not fitting in, always being on the outside, looking in. Loki's eyes met hers, and something passed between them. Recognition, understanding, 2 outsiders finding each other across realities. You see too much, little Nexus, Loki said, but his voice was gentle. He pulled her close, his hands settling on her waist. I'm not used to being seen. Get used to it, Jade replied, rising on her toes to kiss him. Where Jareth had been patient and worshipful, Loki was intense and demanding. He kissed her like he was trying to consume her, his clever hands finding every sensitive spot on her body with calculated precision. He undressed her with magic, her clothes simply vanishing, and Jade gasped at the casual display of power. Show off, she managed, and Loki's laugh was dark and delighted. You have no idea, he purred, lifting her effortlessly and carrying her to his bed. Loki made love like he did everything else, with cunning and intensity and a desperate need to prove himself. Jade met him passion for passion, learning the shape of his scars, both physical and emotional. When they joined, she felt the second anchor lock into place, and this time she was ready for the rush of connection. She saw his memories, the discovery of his true heritage as a frost giant, the fall from the Bifrost, the torture and manipulation by Thanos, every moment of pain that had shaped him into the god of mischief, and underneath it all, a desperate desire to be loved for who he was, not who people wanted him to be. Jade held him through the climax, feeling tears on her cheeks, though she wasn't sure if they were hers or his. When they finally parted, Loki looked shaken. You saw, he said, not by a question. I saw, Jade confirmed, all of it, and I'm not going anywhere. Something in Loki's carefully constructed mask crumbled. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you. Too bad, Jade said, running her fingers through his dark hair. You're stuck with me now. That's how anchors work, apparently. Loki's laugh was watery, but genuine. When he pulled back, his eyes were clearer than she'd ever seen them. Now then, he said, visibly gathering himself, I believe I owe you a lesson in magic. For the rest of the night, Loki taught Jade the basics of Asgardian sorcery. Unlike Jareth's crystal manipulation, which was about partnership and flow, Loki's magic was about will and cunning. It was about convincing reality that what you wanted was what should be. Magic is lying, Loki explained, demonstrating by creating a perfect illusion of himself standing across the room. You're lying to the universe itself, and the trick is being convincing enough that reality believes you. Jade's first attempts produced nothing but sparks and the smell of ozone. But gradually, with Loki's patient instruction, she managed to create a simple illusion, a ball of green light that danced in her palm. Excellent, Loki praised, and the genuine pride in his voice made Jade's heart swell. You're a remarkably quick study. By the time we're done, you'll be able to create illusions complex enough to fool anyone. Even you? Jade teased. Even me, Loki confirmed with a grin, though I'd be delighted to see you try. They spent the rest of the night trading magical tricks and stories, and by the time Jade returned to her own chambers as dawn broke over the labyrinth, she felt lighter than air. 2 anchors forged, 5 more to go. The third night belonged to Edgar Allan Poe. The poet had spent a day exploring the labyrinth's extensive library, a room that seemed to contain every book ever written across all realities. When Jake found him that evening, he was sitting by a window with a leather-bound journal, writing with quick, intense strokes. "Forgive me," he said, looking up as she approached. "I find myself inspired by this place. The labyrinth is like a poem made manifest, all symbolism and hidden meaning." "What are you writing?" Jay asked, settling into the chair beside him. "Thoughts on the nature of love across dimensions," Edgar replied, his dark eyes warm. "On how two souls can recognize each other even when they come from different realities. On the terror and beauty of connection." He set down his pen and took Jade's hand, bringing it to his lips with old-world courtesy. "I've dreamed of you, I think, before I knew you were real. A red-haired muse who saw beauty in darkness." "I've read all your work," Jade admitted. "The Raven, The Telltale Heart, Annabelle Lee. Your words made me feel less alone." Edgar's expression softened with emotion. "Then we have given each other gifts already, you and I. You gave me solace through my words, and now you offer me adventure beyond imagining. How could I not fall in love with you?" The words were said simply, without artifice, and they struck Jade directly in the heart. Of all her champions, Edgar was the only one who dealt primarily in emotion and beauty, rather than power, and somehow, that made him no less formidable. "Show me your world," Jake said. "Teach me what you know." Edgar smiled and stood, offering his hand. "With pleasure, my dear." His chambers were a writer's paradise. Manuscripts covered every surface, some ancient and some that looked freshly written. Bookshelves lined the walls, and a massive desk sat before a window that looked out onto a stormy sky, complete with thunder and the call of ravens. "Atmosphere is everything," Edgar explained, guiding her to a velvet sofa near the fireplace. "When you're trying to capture emotion on the page, you need to surround yourself with the feeling you want to evoke." He settled beside her, one hand coming up to cup her face. "You are like a poem, Jade, all wild beauty and untapped potential. May I?" Jade nodded, and Edgar kissed her with the reverence of an artist encountering his greatest inspiration. He undressed her slowly, his poet's hands tracing patterns on her skin, each touch deliberate and meaningful. "You're a work of art," he murmured against her throat. "Every curve, every line, every freckle of verse in an epic poem." They made love, slowly, tenderly, with Edgar whispering poetry against her skin. It was different from the intensity of Jareth or Loki. This was worship, adoration, the kind of deep, romantic connection that Edgar had written about his entire life. When they joined, and the third anchor locked into place, Jade felt his soul like an open book. Every word he'd ever written, every loss he'd endured, the death of his young wife that had haunted him, the poverty and struggle, the way he transformed his pain into beauty and shared it with the world. And she felt his joy now, his wonder at finding himself in a real adventure with a woman who understood his darkness and loved him for it. They lay tangled together afterwards, and Edgar read to her from his works, his voice like honey and smoke. Then he taught her what he knew best, the art of understanding emotion. "Everyone has tells," he explained, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her arm, little gestures and expressions that reveal what they're really feeling. "As a writer, I learned to read people like books, and as a Nexus, you'll need that skill. You'll be dealing with people from across all realities. You need to understand what they want, what they fear, what drives them." He spent the rest of the night teaching her how to observe, how to listen not just to words, but to the spaces between them, how to read body language and micro-expressions. It was a different kind of magic, but no less valuable. "You're going to be magnificent," Edgar said as the night drew to a close. "A Nexus who understands the heart as well as the mind. The darkness won't stand a chance." 3 anchors forged, 4 more to go. The fourth night brought Kylo Ren, or Ben Solo as he was beginning to think of himself again. The fallen Jedi was nervous in a way the others hadn't been. He gazed in the war room when Jake found him, his internal conflict visible in every movement. "You don't have to do this," Jake said gently. "Not if you're not ready." "It's not that," Ben said, turning to face her. Without his mask, he looked young and vulnerable. "It's that I wanted too much. I spent so long denying myself any kind of real connection. I'm afraid of what will happen when I let go." Jade moved closer, reaching out to touch his scarred face. "Then let's find out together." Ben's chambers were sparse compared to the others. A simple bed, a weapons rack holding his lightsaber and staff, a window looking out onto a snowy landscape that reminded Jade of the place where she'd found him. "I haven't had a real home in years," Ben admitted. "I'm not sure I remember how." "Then we'll figure it out," Jake said. She took his hand and led him to the bed, sitting down and pulling him beside her. "Tell me something about yourself, something real, not about the Force or Kylo Ren or your family, just Ben Choi." He was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "I used to build things, droids mostly, little machines that could help people. I haven't done that in years. Kylo Ren doesn't create, he only destroys." "Maybe it's time Ben Solo learned to create again," Jake suggested. Something in his expression cracked open. He pulled her into a kiss that was desperate and grateful and full of years of repressed emotion. They undressed each other with fumbling urgency, both of them needing this connection more than their next breath. When they came together, it was raw and powerful and honest. Ben held nothing back, letting Jade see every part of him. The light and the dark, the love and the rage, the boy who'd been terrified of his own power, and the man who'd embraced it too completely. The fourth anchor locked into place with the force of a supernova. Jade gasped as she felt the force itself flowing through their connection, vast and infinite and achingly beautiful. She understood, suddenly, how Ben had been pulled between light and dark his entire life. The force wasn't either one, it was both, and the struggle to balance them was eternal. "You're not broken," she told him as they lay together afterward, both shaking from the intensity of their connection. "You're just trying to hold 2 opposing forces in balance. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you incredibly strong." Ben buried his face in her hair, his arms tight around her. "I don't know how to be what you need." "Be yourself," Jay said simply. "That's all any of us can do." For the rest of the night, Ben taught her the basics of the Force. How to sense the energy that connected all living things, how to move objects with her mind, how to feel the intentions of others before they even acted. The Force is everywhere, he explained, guiding her through a meditation. In the labyrinth, in Asgard, in every reality. It has different names in different worlds, but the essence is the same. Life creates it and makes it grow. As a Nexus, you have access to it all. Jade felt it, that vast ocean of energy. She lifted a crystal sphere from across the room, using the Force to float it gently into her palm. The combination of Jareth's teaching and Ben's created something new, and the crystal began to glow with inner light. "Incredible," Ben breathed. "You're combining techniques from different realities, creating something unique to you." 4 anchors forged, 3 more to go. The 5th night belonged to Bucky Barnes, and Jade approached it with a different kind of nervousness. The Winter Soldier was still finding himself, still putting together the pieces of who he'd been before the torture and programming. She didn't want to push him into something he wasn't ready for. But when she found him in the training room, working through combat forms with mechanical precision, he stopped immediately upon seeing her. "Hey," he said, grabbing a towel to wipe the sweat from his face. "Is it time?" "Only if you want it to be," Jade replied. "We can wait. There's no rush. Bucky sat down the towel and crossed to her, his metal hand reaching out to gently touch her face. I want this. I spent 70 years being a weapon. I want to remember what it's like to be a man, to touch someone without hurting them. The vulnerability in his voice made Jade's heart ache. She covered his metal hand with her own. You won't hurt me. I know, Bucky said softly. That's what makes us safe. His chambers were simple but comfortable, reminding Jade of what a soldier's room might have looked like in the 1940s. Black and white photos lined one wall, showing a young man with a bright smile and his scrawny blonde friend, Steve Rogers, before the serum, before everything changed. I'm trying to remember who I was, Bucky explained, noticing her looking at the photos, before the fall, before the Winter Soldier. I was someone's best friend, someone's brother in arms. I was good. You still are, Jade insisted. They came together slowly, Bucky clearly holding himself back, afraid of his own strength. Jade took her time, showing him that she wasn't fragile, that she wanted all of him, including the parts he feared. When they made love, Bucky was tender and careful, and desperately grateful for every touch. The fifth anchor locked into place, and Jade felt the full weight of his trauma. Decades of torture, the loss of his identity, the horrific things he'd been forced to do. But she also felt his core, that fundamental goodness that the Winter Soldier programming could never quite erase. I've got you, she whispered as Bucky shook in her arms. You're not alone anymore. They held each other for a long time afterwards, both needing the simple comfort of human connection. Then, gradually, Bucky began to teach her what he knew. I'm a soldier, he said, demonstrating a combat stance. I can't teach you magic or the Force, but I can teach you how to fight, how to survive, how to protect the people you love. He spent the rest of the night showing her basic self-defense, how to fall without injury, how to read an opponent's movements. It was physical and grounding, and exactly what Jade needed after the emotional intensity of the previous nights. You're gonna face things that want to hurt you, Bucky said seriously. Powers and magic are great, but sometimes you need to know how to throw a punch, how to get out of a hold, how to survive long enough for your powers to matter. 5 anchors forged. 2 more to go. The 6th night brought a different kind of nervousness. Jade found Freddy Krueger in the strangest part of the castle, a wing that seemed to exist in perpetual twilight. His chambers were a controlled nightmare, all dark corners and flickering shadows, but somehow not frightening, more like a Tim Burton film than a true horror show. Welcome to my parlor, Freddy said with that terrible grin. I promise to be on my best behavior, mostly. I trust you, Jade said, and meant it. Freddy's expression shifted, the grin fading into something more genuine. You really do, don't you? Even knowing what I am. I know what you were, Jade corrected, and I know what you're choosing to become. That's what matters. For the first time since she met him, Freddy looked uncertain. He moved closer, his burnt face and terrible clawed glove somehow less frightening in the soft light. I don't know how to be gentle, he admitted. It's not in my nature. Then don't be, Jade said simply. Be yourself. That's all I've asked from any of you. What followed was dark and intense, and unlike anything Jade had experienced before. Freddy made love like he crafted nightmares, with creativity and intensity and a strange kind of devotion. He was careful not to hurt her, his clawed glove discarded, but he held nothing back emotionally. When the 6th anchor locked into place, Jade found herself pulled into the dream realm, Freddy's natural domain. Here, reality was even more fluid than in the labyrinth. They existed in a space between waking and sleeping, where anything was possible. This is my world, Freddy said, the realm shifting around them to show beautiful dreams and gentle nightmares. I spent decades using it to hurt people, but it doesn't have to be that way. Dreams can heal, they can teach, they can bring people together. He showed her how to navigate the dream realm, how to shape it with her thoughts, how to enter the dreams of others. It was a powerful skill, and one day could be used for good or ill. You're giving me a lot of power, Jade observed. I'm giving you the tools to save people, Freddy corrected. What you do with them is up to you, but I believe in you, Red. You see the best in monsters like me. That's a kind of magic all its own. 6 anchors forged. 1 more to go. The 7th and final night belonged to Severus Snape, and Jade approached the chambers with a mixture of anticipation and emotion. This was the last anchor. After tonight, the circle would be complete. Snape's rooms were exactly what she would have expected, walls lined with books and potions ingredients. A laboratory table covered in bubbling cauldrons, and everywhere the scent of herbs and magic. He stood by the window when she entered, his back to her, his black robes making him look like a living shadow. Are you certain about this? He asked without turning. Once this final anchor is forged, there's no going back. You'll be bound to all 7 of us for the rest of your existence. I know, Jade said, crossing to him. She placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling the tension in his frame. Severus, look at me. He turned slowly, and Jade was struck by the vulnerability in his dark eyes. I've spent my entire life alone, even when I was surrounded by people. I don't know how to be part of something like this. None of us do, Jade said gently. We're making it up as we go, but that's okay. We have time to figure it out. She reached up and carefully began undoing the buttons of his high-collared coat. Snape stood frozen, barely breathing, as she slowly revealed the man beneath the layers of black fabric. His body was marked with scars, evidence of a life spent in service and sacrifice. Jade traced each one with gentle fingers, learning his history through touch. You're beautiful, she whispered, and Snape made a sound like he'd been struck. No one has ever said that to me before. Then they were fools, Jade replied, pulling him down into a kiss. Snape made love with the same intensity he brought to everything else, focused, skilled, and utterly devoted. When they joined and the 7th anchor locked into place, Jade felt the circuit complete. Energy rushed through her, connecting all 7 anchors into a perfect constellation. She could feel all of them now. Jareth in his crystal chambers, Loki reading in the library, Edgar writing poetry, Ben meditating, Bucky training, Freddy prowling the dream realm, and Severus right here in her arms, his walls finally crumbling. The power was overwhelming. For a moment, Jade thought she might drown in it, but then she felt her anchor steadying her, 7 points of light holding her in place as her Nexus abilities fully awakened. She could see everything, all realities, all possibilities, all of time and space spread out before her like a cosmic web. And at the center of it all, holding it together, were 7 threads of gold connecting her to the men she loved. I've got you, Severus murmured, holding her as she shook with the force of her awakening. We all do. You're not alone. When the vision faded, Jade found herself still in Severus's arms, but fundamentally changed. She was no longer just a girl from Portland who worked in a bookstore. She was the Nexus, a being with the power to travel anywhere, to see all possibilities, to shape reality itself. How do you feel? Severus asked carefully. Powerful, Jade said honestly. Terrified. Complete. Good, Severus said, helping her sit up. Now, let me teach you what I know. The others have taught you combat and magic and the Force. I'll teach you the art of potions and strategy. How to think 3 steps ahead. How to plan for every possibility. They spend the rest of the night in his laboratory, Severus patiently explaining the properties of various ingredients, showing her how a properly brewed potion could be just as powerful as any spell. It was methodical and grounding, and exactly what Jade needed after the overwhelming experience of completing the anchor circle. "You're going to do extraordinary things," Severus said as dawn approached. "All of us can feel it. The darkness that's coming doesn't stand a chance." 7 anchors forged, the circle complete. When Jade finally returned to the war room the next morning, all 7 of her champions were waiting for her. They stood around the round table, and as she entered, they each placed a hand on the surface. The star chart etched into the wood began to glow, showing not just the stars of one universe, but all of them. Every reality, every world, all connected by golden threads. And at the center, pulsing with power, was a constellation of 8 stars, 7 surrounding one, her champions and herself, the Nexus and her anchors. "We're ready," Jared said, speaking for all of them. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Jade placed her own hand on the table, and the constellation blazed with light. She could feel her power thrumming through her veins, steady and controlled now that she had her anchors to ground her. "Then let's get to work," she said, her voice strong and certain. "We have a multiverse to save." The 7 nights of magic were complete. The anchors were forged. The Nexus was unleashed. And the real adventure was just beginning. Episode 4. The Nexus Unbound. The war room had become the heart of the resistance. For 3 days following the completion of the anchor bonds, Jade and her 7 champions had been planning, strategizing, and preparing for the confrontation they all knew was coming. The round table star chart had revealed something troubling. Points of darkness spreading across multiple realities like an infection, and at the center of it all, the council of beings who sought to harness the power of the Nexus for their own purposes. Jade stood at the head of the table, her wild red curls pulled back in a practical braid, her eyes scanning the glowing map of the multiverse. She wore clothing that was a blend of all the worlds she touched. As guardian leather mixed with practical earth combat gear, a crystal sphere hanging at her hip courtesy of Jareth, and Snape's protective potions tucked into various pockets. She looked every inch the warrior she was becoming. "The Dark Council operates out of a pocket dimension," Snape said, his finger tracing a particularly dense cluster of shadows on the map. "It is spaced between realities, which makes it difficult to access. They've been using it as a base to launch attacks on worlds with Nexus potential, draining the dimensional energy before actual Nexus beings can awaken." "Which explains why Nexus beings are so rare," Loki added, his arms crossed as he studied the map with calculating eyes. "They've been systematically eliminating the possibility across multiple timelines." "The man who attacked you in the bookstore was one of their collectors," Jareth said, his mismatched eyes hard. "They sent agents to identify potential Nexus beings and either capture them or eliminate them before they can awaken. You slipped through their fingers, which is why they'll be coming for you in force now." Jade felt the chill run down her spine, but she pushed the fear aside. She'd spent the last 3 days training intensively with each of her champions, learning to combine their abilities with her Nexus powers in ways that none of them had anticipated. She was ready for this. "So we don't wait for them to come to us," she said firmly. "We take the fight to them. We end this before they can hurt anyone else." Ben Solo looked up from where he'd been meditating in the corner, his connection to the Force allowing him to sense the ebb and flow of the cosmic energies they were discussing. "The Force is in agreement. I can feel the darkness you're describing. It's a wound in the fabric of existence itself. If we don't stop it, it will spread until it consumes everything." "How many are we talking about?" Bucky asked, ever the practical soldier. "How big is this council?" Edgar Allan Poe had been unusually quiet, his dark eyes distant, as if he were composing poetry in his mind. Now he spoke, his voice soft but certain. "Numbers don't matter. What matters is that they've never faced anyone like us before. 7 masters of their respective crafts, united with a Nexus who can channel all of our abilities. We're not just a fellowship, we're a symphony." "A very violent symphony," Freddy added with a grin, his burnt features somehow managing to look eager. "I like it." Jade smiled despite the gravity of the situation. Her family, strange and impossible as they were, gave her strength. She reached out with her Nexus senses, feeling the golden threads that connected her to each of them. And through those threads, she could feel their absolute faith in her. "Then we go today," she said decisively. "Right now, before they have time to prepare for us." Jareth moved to her side, producing a crystal sphere that showed swirling images of the pocket dimension they needed to reach. "I can guide you through the opening of a portal. The labyrinth's magic, combined with your Nexus abilities, should be enough to pierce their defenses. But Jade, once we're inside, there's no guarantee we'll be able to leave quickly. We need to be prepared for a prolonged battle." "I've prepared emergency potions," Snape said, producing a bandolier filled with small vials, healing drafts, energy restoration, and a few surprises for our enemies. "Distribute them among yourselves." They each took their share of the potions, and Jade felt the weight of preparation settling over the group. This was really happening. They were about to assault a council of beings powerful enough to threaten entire realities. Loki appeared at her other side, his hand coming to rest on her shoulder. "Remember what I taught you about illusion magic. When you're facing an enemy, sometimes the best weapon is making them see what isn't there. Confusion is a powerful tool. And the Force will guide you," Ben added, standing and igniting his lightsaber. The crimson blade hummed to life, casting red light across his scarred face. "Trust your instincts. They're connected to something larger than any of us." Bucky checked his weapons with practiced efficiency, his metal arm gleaming in the light of the war room. "Stay mobile. Don't let them pin you down. And remember, we've got your back. All of us." "Make them fear their own nightmares," Freddy said, his clawed glove flexing. "I'll be in their heads, turning their thoughts against them. Nobody messes with our Nexus." Edgar moved to stand with the others, and though he carried no obvious weapons, Jade knew he was perhaps the most dangerous of them all. His ability to read people, to understand their deepest fears and desires, would be invaluable in the battle to come. "Together then," Jade said, holding out her hand. One by one, her 7 champions placed their hands over hers, creating a circle of connection. She felt their power flowing into her, through her, amplifying her Nexus abilities until she could see the threads of reality itself. "For the multiverse," Jareth said softly. "For our family," Jade replied. She closed her eyes and reached out with everything she had. Her Nexus power blazed to life, golden light erupting from her body as she found the threads that led to the pocket dimension. The space between realities was slippery and hard to grasp, but she used Jareth's teaching, treating it like a crystal sphere that won its role. She guided rather than forced. A portal tore open in the war room, larger than any she created before. Through it, they could see a twisted landscape of dark stone and sickly green sky, a place that existed nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. "Now," Jade commanded, and as one, the 8 of them charged through. They emerged into chaos. The pocket dimension was exactly as dark as the map had suggested, but seeing it in person was something else entirely. The ground beneath their feet felt unstable, shifting like it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Structures rose in the distance, impossible buildings that hurt to look at directly, their geometry wrong in ways that defied description. And waiting for them was a dark council. 7 figures stood arrayed before them, each one radiating power and malevolence. Jade recognized the man who had attacked her in the bookstore, but he was clearly the least of them. The others were beings from different realities, brought together by their hunger for power. The Nexus comes to us willingly, one of them said. A woman whose body seemed to flicker between forms, never settling on one solid shape. How convenient. You saved us the trouble of extracting you from your hiding place. This isn't a surrender, Jade said, her voice carrying clearly across the twisted landscape. This is a reckoning. The woman laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Bold words for someone so newly awakened. You've had your power for less than a week. We've been harnessing dimensional energy for centuries. What makes you think you stand a chance? Because she's not alone, Loki said, stepping forward with his hands already glowing with green magic. And unlike you, she actually inspires loyalty rather than fear. Loyalty is a weakness, another council member said, this one appearing as a mass of shadows barely contained in humanoid form. Something we'll demonstrate shortly. The battle began without warning. The shadow being lunged forward, tendrils of darkness reaching out to ensnare them. But Jade was ready. She'd spent 3 days training for exactly this moment. She pulled on her connection to Ben and thrust her hand forward, channeling the force. The shadow tendrils froze in midair, held by invisible power. Kylo Ren was there a moment later, his lightsaber carving through the frozen darkness, severing the tendrils before they could reform. The force is with us, he said, his voice steady, and it's stronger than your shadows. The council members spread out, clearly intending to divide the fellowship and pick them off individually. But Jade had anticipated this. She reached into her collection of potions and hurled one at the ground between them. It exploded in a cloud of silver smoke, and when it cleared, there were not 8 members of the fellowship, but dozens. Loki's illusion magic, amplified by Snape's potion and channeled through Jade's Nexus abilities, had created perfect copies of each of them. The council members hesitated, unable to tell which targets were real. Confusion, Jade said with a smile. Just like you taught me, Loki. The god of mischief's grin was fierce. That's my girl. The flickering woman snarled and released a wave of energy that dispelled the illusions, but it had bought them precious seconds. Bucky and Jareth moved as one, the super soldier providing cover fire while the Goblin King hurled crystal spheres that exploded on impact. Each one contained a fragment of the labyrinth reality warping magic. Your tricks won't save you, the woman hissed. We are the Dark Council. We have consumed the power of 17 Nexus beings. You're just one more to add to our collection. Jade felt anger surge through her. 17 people like her, killed before they could even understand what they were. She reached deep into her power, feeling the anchor bonds blazing like stars, and decided it was time to show the council what a fully awakened Nexus could do. She raised both hands and pulled on every skill she'd learned. Jareth's crystal magic created spheres of light that hung in the air around her. Loki's illusion magic made them multiply. Snape's potion knowledge infused them with caustic energy. Ben's force training gave her the power to hurl them with devastating accuracy. Bucky's combat training guided her aim. Edgar's understanding of fear showed her exactly where to strike to cause maximum psychological impact. And Freddy's nightmare magic made each sphere a vessel of terror. The barrage of attacks hit the Dark Council like a meteor shower. They scattered, their formation broken, and Jade's fellowship pounced on the opening. Severus Snape moved with deadly grace. His wand work precise and brutal. He targeted the bookstore man, the collector who had tried to take Jade. Spells flew faster than the eye could follow, each one designed to incapacitate rather than kill. Snape had spent a lifetime mastering the subtle arts of magical combat, and it showed. You made a grave error coming after her, Snape said coldly, his wand sending the man flying backward into a twisted structure. She is under our protection now. Edgar Allan Poe stood back from the direct combat, but his contribution was no less vital. He watched the council members, reading their body language, their hesitations, their fears, and he called out guidance to the others, his poet's voice carrying clearly over the chaos. The shadow being fears light, he called out. True light, not magical constructs. And the woman, she's unstable. Her flickering isn't a strength, it's a weakness. She can't fully exist in any one reality. Jareth immediately understood. He created a crystal sphere that blazed with the light of the labyrinth's eternal sun and hurled it at the shadow being. The creature screamed, a sound like tearing metal, as the light burned through its darkness. Meanwhile, Jade focused on the flickering woman. She reached out with her Nexus senses and found the threads of reality that the woman was desperately trying to hold onto. She was a failed Nexus, Jade realized with sudden clarity. Someone who had touched the power that couldn't control it, and the council had warped her into a weapon. Instead of attacking, Jade did something the council never expected. She reached out and stabilized the woman's connection to reality. The effect was immediate. The woman solidified, becoming fully present in the pocket dimension for the first time in what must have been years. She looked down at her hands in shock, seeing them whole and real. What did you do? She whispered. Gave you what you needed, Jade said gently. You don't have to serve them. You never did. The woman's eyes filled with tears, and then with rage. She turned on the other council members, her power now focused and devastating. You did this to me. You promised to help me control my abilities, but instead you turned me into a monster. The remaining council members realized too late that they were now facing not just a fellowship, but one of their own turned against them. The battle shifted decisively. Freddy Krueger had been waiting for the right moment, and now he struck. He didn't attack physically. Instead, he reached into the dream realm and pulled the council members' sleeping minds into his domain. For a few crucial seconds, they were trapped in waking nightmares, unable to distinguish reality from terror. Bucky and Kylo Ren capitalized on the opening. They moved in perfect synchronization, two warriors who understood combat at a fundamental level. Bucky's gunfire was precise, targeting weapons and weak points, while Ben's lightsaber carved through the council's defenses. They fought not with hatred, but with purpose. Two men who had been weapons themselves and were now choosing to protect rather than destroy. Loki's magic was everywhere at once, creating chaos and confusion among the remaining council members. Illusions within illusions, reality folding back on itself, until the enemy couldn't trust their own senses. And through it all, his voice carried mocking commentary that undermined their confidence as surely as any weapon. Is this really the best the Dark Council can do? He called out. I've faced down Asgardian warriors more fearsome than you lot. My Nexus has more power in her smallest finger than your entire pathetic assembly. Jade felt a surge of affection for him, even in the midst of battle. Loki's gift wasn't just magic, it was understanding how to break an enemy's will. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The pocket dimension itself began to destabilize as the council's power faltered. Structures crumbled, the sickly green sky started to tear, then Jade realized with sudden alarm that if they didn't end this soon, the entire dimension would collapse with them inside it. We need to finish this now, she called out to her fellowship. The dimension is failing. Jareth understood immediately. Then let's give them a finale they'll never forget. The 7 champions moved to surround Jade, forming a protective circle with her at the center. She felt their power flowing into her through the anchor bonds, all of their abilities combining with her Nexus gifts. The energy built and built until she thought she might burst from the sheer magnitude of it. And then she released it. Pure Nexus energy exploded outward in a wave of golden light. It swept across the pocket dimension, and everywhere it touched, it restored stability, it healed corruption, it brought order to chaos. The remaining Dark Council members were caught in the wave and simply unmade. Their stolen power stripped away and returned to the multiverse where it belonged. When the light faded, only silence remained. The pocketed mansion had stabilized, but it was empty now except for Jade, her 7 champions, and the woman who had been freed from the council's control. The twisted structures were gone, replaced by a neutral gray space that existed in peaceful nothingness. Jade collapsed to her knees, exhausted from the massive expenditure of power. Immediately, her champions were there, supporting her, their hands gentle as they helped her stay upright. That was incredible, Ben breathed, all clear in his voice. I've never felt the force move like that. You didn't just defeat them, you healed the damage they'd done. Is everyone alright? Jade asked, her voice weak. She looked around at her family, checking each of them for injuries. We're fine, precious thing, Sheriff assured her, brushing a strand of red hair from her face. A few bruises, nothing serious. You're the one who channeled enough power to reshape a dimension. Snape was already pressing a healing potion into her hands. Drink. You've overtaxed yourself, even without anchoring. You need rest. The woman who had been part of the council approached cautiously, her form now stable and whole. Thank you, she said quietly. I don't even know your name, but you gave me back my existence. I've been trapped between realities for 30 years. I'm Jade, she said, accepting the woman's gratitude with a tired smile. And you don't have to thank me. What are you gonna do now? Find my home, the woman said. My original reality. I had a family once. Maybe they're still there. She looked at the fellowship, at the obvious bond between them, and smiled. You've built something beautiful here. Protect it. Jade opened a portal for the woman, using the last of her immediate strength to send her home. Then she let herself sag against Jareth, trusting him to hold her up. Can we go home now? She asked plaintively. I think I've had enough multiversal combat for one day. Home it is, Loki said, and together, the 7 of them opened a portal back to the labyrinth. They emerged in the war room to find it exactly as they'd left it, though according to the castle's clock, 3 hours had passed. Time worked strangely in pocket dimensions. Jade made it exactly 2 steps before her legs gave out. Bucky caught her before she could fall, sweeping her up in his arms with the ease of someone who had carried wounded soldiers across battlefields. I've got you, he said softly. Let's get you somewhere comfortable. They brought her to her chambers, which the castle had prepared while they were gone. The room was warm and inviting,